Kevin, tires, control number 3.
Mike Bonner, control number dry. Took me too long to think of that. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's all good. Is that German?
Yeah, das ist Deutsch, yeah.
Oh, good to know. Good to know. That'll probably come in handy one day.
Maybe. I was just teaching in London, and I had a gentleman from Austria who I spoke barely passable German to. So don't tweet German at me, please. English is preferred. Broken English, if you can handle.
Yeah, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. It's good that you're at least partially bilingual. I don't even have that skill set.
Yeah, I'm 1.5 lingual, I guess, might be the better.
Well, very cool. All right. So today we are talking about data protection, which again, I would argue is asset management. It is data assets.
Yeah, I think we're getting sufficiently far away from like the intent of asset management that it does need to be treated sort of separately.
Yeah, and that is fair. And that is fair. But I mean, realistically, what we're looking for with this control is, and I get angry and passionate about this topic, is that data classification, the types of data that you have and the different classifications it falls into. And that can be, hey, this is patient data, hey, this is credit card data, or it could be this is confidential, or how it's stored. Arguably, security people should know that info, and the business should know that info, and nobody seems to actually know that info, and it drives me crazy.
Yeah, I'll give it up to the company that I currently work for. They have a tremendous data classification program that, like, I'm not even being snarky. Like, they know exactly, like, a social security number is this, and that has implications for at-rest and in-transit encryption versus like a public email address. And they've spent a tremendous amount of time trying to figure out like the right way to store and move data. And it's largely informed their, obviously storage and network zoning policies. And I will absolutely give them credit for that till the end of my days. I think it's actually been really helpful when it comes to me as a designer and developing software and systems to operate with that environment. There's very little ambiguity. And that means that I don't accidentally store stuff in open S3 buckets.
Anymore. No, and it's fantastic to hear that there are organizations mature enough and have successful programs. I have done a ton of DLP implementations and helped develop data classification standards in various size organizations. And what always seems to be interesting is that there are people inside of the business that understand what their data classification should be. And we can create that model super easy. But then going out and actually tracking down where this data is, how this data moves, how it's transacted with, that's absolutely a failure in almost every place that I've seen it rolled out. One of the larger DLP implementations I've done was at a hospital of about 120,000 employees, where we went through, we figured out their data classification model. We figured out where that data is stored, some in Windows shares, some in SQL databases, and we purchased a
some on desktops and some in desktops and TXT files.
Yeah, primarily in Facebook groups and Pastebin. And so we went out, we purchased the DLP solution, we rolled it out. We have things on web proxies that we're looking when people transact to the internet. We had things scanning web shares. We had things scanning SQL databases, looking at flat files, crawling the network. We were thorough. And so I architected it, designed it, implemented it, configured it, and it was working and it was generating alerts. And so I handed it off to the compliance team and said, all right, my job is done, guys. You have a functioning product. And I checked back in about
8 minutes later.
It was probably a month. It's probably a month. And I checked in with the compliance team and I said, hey guys, how's our data classification and DLP program working? And they go, oh yeah, we turned that off. And I said, what? And they basically said, listen, it was generating too many alerts for us. And I was like, well, we can tune it to throttle that back. Like, let's start working on, instead of just turning something off, let's tune it to our environment, understand where, hey, maybe our signatures are too broad. Maybe, you know, we're matching things that are inappropriate. And they go, no, 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 no. That was fine. It's just our users are sending so much inappropriate data to the internet that we can't like go after all of these instances. And that's when I just gave up.
There's too many credit cards on desktops.
You know, I mean, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, having the model, so having a standard for data classification and understanding what you have, I do think as a security person is critically important. Figuring out the enforcement mechanism, I have found has been tremendously difficult. And like, I don't even have an open source solution for SMBs that we could put in this space. I've seen various SASE providers try to, implement DLP Lite. I've seen firewalls try and implement DLP Lite. I've seen web proxies implement DLP Lite. And I don't think that those are bad things to enable on whatever you may have in place, but it's not going to be a comprehensive program to be able to enforce your classification. And so, I hate saying that I always see DLP as a failure, but that has been my experience.
It's tremendously difficult. Like if I had an enterprise environment that was predominantly on-prem, I would probably lean more towards the web proxy side of things to prevent people from moving the data, right? Because if it's just sitting on a laptop, like that's bad, but if it's going to pastebin, that's worse, right? So I want to look for things like social security numbers, credit cards, or any other data elements that I might be interested in, right? Like if you're a manufacturer of, let's just say like microchips, and you have an extension, and I'm just making this up, like MCS, right? Like microchip specification file, right? Like you probably want to watch for those things traversing network boundaries.
Yep.
From a coding it yourself point of view, tremendously fun problem to solve. Difficult.
Wow, that's a great way of phrasing it. I think it's a
lie. No, I'm 100% serious, right? So like if I was looking at a Windows environment and I really had to code some stuff out, I would definitely use WinRM, which we've talked about before, Windows Remote Management. And I would scan any users. I would scan their desktop, their downloads, and their documents folders. And then I would open them and I would do like just string matching and maybe some regex, right? Like it's not going to be super fast, but if you have a solution that's asynchronous and you can just go out, run the jobs, and collect the results, like, all right, like you're in business. Again, on Mac and Linux, that sort of stuff is actually relatively trivial because you would use, again, Paramiko, in my opinion. You could also use Ansible for something like this. And then you just run grep jobs over everything in a particular user's directory, like a grep -RI for recursive search and case insensitive. And then maybe you do egrep and you can search for patterns using regular expressions to find interesting data. This doesn't need to be like, I think, immediately at runtime to detect this data. But if you had like a batch, let's say, that ran, once, twice, 3 times a day, you might be able to find people saving data on your machines. And then from a network point of view, again, web proxy for me is probably the best place that I would look for that data.
Yeah. No, and that's fair. I mean, if I can give any advice to organizations that are going to go down this path, is really to understand what types of data you have, like working with the business and understanding how they transact, how they inventory, what's important to them. In the healthcare space, there's all the defaults, right? You've got credit card numbers, passports, social security numbers, that's kind of a default thing. But where we would find really interesting data was insurance numbers. So things that matched insurance data, that kind of told us, hey, there's PHI being transacted here. And to go back to your point, like if you have a unique string for a file type or something, that's great to search for and understand that those types of data are unique in your environment and, again, should not cross a boundary. And along those lines, going back to a previous video when we talked about software asset inventory, right? If you have something like an OS query or Velociraptor, that's something that you can look for if it's a particular file type across, a wide environment. When you start getting into the content of files, then it gets a little bit more challenging, at least for me. In having those regex strings, but then being able to enumerate everything to look for matches.
Yeah, and I think like volume, right, is the tremendous problem of almost anything in InfoSec, right?
Yeah.
Like you were alluding to in your story earlier, it's like those were all valid alerts, but they had 3 people at the time who could actually look at it, and then you look and you say, all right, I have 10,000 violations a year divided over 3 people, and so that's what, like 3,300 violations a year, and if we divide that over 200 working days, right, that works out to be some number that I can't work out in my head really quickly.
Math is hard.
Yeah, it is. It's tremendously difficult, especially for a software developer. And you say like, all right, is this like a legit amount of alerts for 3, 5, 6, 10 analysts or whatever to handle?
Mm-hmm.
And can they look at the data that they've received with the context to make like the right call?
Yeah.
So,
and that's even more of a challenge when you're a security analyst, because you probably for data that might be specific to your business, you might not have any idea why that's classified the way it is. Yeah. Right? There's obvious stuff, again, so security number, password, all that kind of stuff. Driver's license, we know why that's protected data. We may not know why something is on that list when it's intellectual property, or when it's something unique to your industry.
I would actually call out another one, which is surprising and terrifying, is out of 10 security analysts who I've talked to, 7 don't know what a private key is. And yeah, so if you saw a private key, alert come across the network, like, and if you don't understand PKI and why a private key is a problem, then like you're not going to be able to intelligently triage and action an alert. So again, it's tough. But then again, if you have a software suite that ships a private key as part of a test suite, that's totally okay to share wherever. And then you get 10,000 DLP alerts because your CI/CD pipeline is really wild, then like that erodes the confidence in the alert too. So this could be really tough. The only person I know actually that ever worked like a real DLP alert was Trevor. This guy Trevor, he works here in the Valley. He's tremendous. If you're looking for like an amazing like security analyst engineer, hit me up. I'll get you his resume. But he like got actually a web proxy alert, and it was a rejected zip file called customers.zip. And it was someone who was about to walk, and they were emailing all their customer records for like some real estate company to their personal email address. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's perfect. That's the exact use case that we're looking for when it comes to data protection, because obviously that data is like not only critical from an ethical point of view, like protecting like social security numbers and credit card numbers, but also from like a business point of view, because if you email all of your leads out, then like you can actually have a deleterious impact on the organization that you're leaving or impacting.
Yeah, absolutely. Heck yeah. Well, I mean, I'm very glad that DLP has been effective for somebody.
Yeah, one time.
At one time.
Which is good. Hey, that's all we can hope for, right?
Yeah. Well, absolutely, man. I am happy we went over this one. I think we've kind of beat it to death again. DLP, fantastic idea. Meh on execution.
Yeah, I think I will say though, on the coder side, DLP solutions are legitimately interesting and fun to code up. Now that we've gone through a few of these sessions, I almost wonder if we should do like side coding, like, hey, like here's how I would code up a solution that's looking for social security numbers and credit card numbers or whatever. So if you're interested in that, hit us up on our social media and say like, yeah, we'd love to watch, an hour long, probably super boring seminar with Kevin and Mike doing some live coding.
Well, how would they reach out to you, Kevin?
Well, it's a great question, Mike. You can hit me up on Twitter at War on Shrugs. You can also find me on GitHub/Degonis. That's where I release all my scripts and whatnot. But yeah, Twitter is probably the best way. So shoot me a DM, slide into my DMs, if you will, on there, and we can keep chatting.
Quick question. How do you spell Degonis?
Dagonis. That's
Okay.
Delta Alpha Golf Oscar November India Sierra. Dag on this.
Is that like the philosopher?
No, that's it. So there's a very long story behind Dagonis that maybe one day we'll get into. I actually found out it's like a fertility god of some religion I didn't know about at the time. So occasionally gets flagged, Dagon specifically, gets flagged from time to time on platforms. That's why I don't use it so much anymore, but I've had my GitHub for 805 million years. So
fair enough. Fair enough. All right. And if anyone's trying to reach me, Mike Bonner Security, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, and we'll catch you next week.
Champion. Take it easy.
Bye, guys. Later. Bye.